Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, episode 27. Good afternoon, Bill. How are you?
Doing very well, Curt. Looking forward to Memorial Day weekend.
Yes. We're getting, we're headed to Memorial Day weekend. Kind of a first milepost, first big mile marker of the baseball season, too. Lots to talk about. Stuff I like to talk about, like strikeouts and pitching and bad pitching, bad starting pitching. A lot of it. So first off, Gerrit Cole, third fat. Now, I said this early, and if you didn't listen to any of the early episodes, one of the things that I try to emphasize is anytime you're in a sport that's over a century old and you're doing something that only 2 players have ever done, or 5 players, you're one of 15, you're in very rarefied air. And Gerrit Cole entered that company. He became the third fastest pitcher in baseball history to strike out 2,000 hitters. Third fastest, meaning he got there. Only 2 guys have gotten there faster than he did. Randy Johnson, 262 games, which I got to witness firsthand, and that's not a lie. And Clayton Kershaw, 277 games. Cole did it in his 278th game. And he's also the third fastest in innings pitched. Chris Sale is first, which kind of mind-boggling to me. At 1,626 innings. Pedro Martinez, 1,711 innings. Did it faster than him. Only the 88th pitcher in baseball to accomplish the feat, including the 7th Yankee to do it. He's 7th in active players behind Scherzer, Verlander, Greinke, Kershaw, Adam Wainwright, and Chris Sale. He's going to be, in context of the sport, worth every penny of the contract they gave him. He is what you call, and is to me, an old school ace, a guy who you can expect to go 7 on a bad night, and anything short of that is a disaster, and that doesn't happen often, if at all, during the season. But it is he is an outlier in every way, shape, and form, because starting pitching is going down the crapper. Lots of numbers here to
Before we move on past Cole, Curt, what about Gerrit Cole's pitching is special?
Well, the whole package, right? I mean, you can look around at guys that have bits and pieces. There are guys with better stuff. There are guys that throw harder. There are guys that might have a better slider. There are guys who mentally might be able to take more. But nobody has all of it, and he has all of it. And that's what a 1 is. A 1 is a guy who you throw opening day, who you throw in a winner-go-home game, who you throw in game 1 of the World Series, and who you throw in a decisive game on short rest. Not a lot of those anymore. And because, you can't count, as much as I would like to, a DeGrom in that, because 7 innings is like a complete game for Jacob, given how he's doing with his health. Alcantara is another guy who I look at as a kind of an old school one. I mean, Scherzer, Verlander. You're not looking at 235 innings out of those guys anymore. And I don't think you're looking at those numbers for almost anybody anymore. And that, to me, I always felt like a number one's biggest statistic, most important statistic was innings pitched. And that's gone the way of the dodo because of sabermetrics, and because of the 6-man rotation, and because of the openers, and this not letting guys go third time around in the lineup. But I did want to mention, before we get to this, when talking about his strikeout stuff, I remember a game I played with 2 of the best to ever play. I was the number 2 guy on the rotation with 2 Hall of Famers, which I was more than okay with. RJ, strikeouts were a big thing for Randy, always a big thing. Getting that 10 punch out mark was a big deal for him. And I know he wanted to be a part of all of the strikeout stuff. Trailed only Nolan Ryan when he finished, and probably will stay there forever. But I remember the night he punched out 20. He punched out 20 only one time, which is kind of amazing considering how much his stuff. But the night he punched out 20, he did it against the Cincinnati Reds, and he got a no decision. He went 9 innings, punched out 20, and it was like I think a 1-1 game to after 9, and he came out. So I mean, Strikeouts are awesome, but you got to get runs. But I think they're one of the indicators of a dominant pitcher, being able to make hitters swing and miss. Especially if, again, the third and fourth time through, you strike out 20 guys, they're not suddenly figuring you out the third time around the lineup. They're doing the same thing they did the first and second time. And that's when you talk about Hall of Fame and pure stuff. And part of the issue for me was, and we talked about this, Bill, early in the year, one of the things that you used to pay for, I think a lot of times, and I know it was something I always recognized as a pitcher, was the matchup. You had the protagonist against the hero, the underdog against the Hall of Famer, all of those things. And a lot of times the guys like Maddox and the reason their records were so amazing and Pedro was that the other pitchers got up to face them. I did. I recognize, hey, if I want to be recognized as one of the best, I got to beat one of the best. And I got to beat the best. And it was going against Maddox. Oh my gosh, we're going to have to figure out a way. And if you think about it too, a lot of early game strategy revolved around getting one across the early against the guy like Maddox, and then understanding you had to throw a shutout. That changed now because the Maddoxes of the world, unfortunately, you're not as worried about that in the sense that I'm not going to see him 3 times around. I'm going to see him. He's going to be out after the 6th, and we have bullpen matchups with our bench and stuff like that. I don't think that entices people to buy tickets. But the bar for starting pitchers has gotten uncomfortably low. Here's some per Sports Illustrated. Here's some interesting numbers. Starting pitchers this year have posted and again, these are pretty amazing when you're talking about a century-plus-old game. The 4th worst winning percentage through today's date since 1901. 4.76 is their winning percentage for starters. 4.45 ERA. Only twice in the past 123 years have starters had this high of an ERA and this low of a win percentage on this date. And those 2 years, 2019 and 2020, and there are no coincidences. Starters account for only 59% of the wins, down from 70% in 2014, and I can't even imagine where it is from 2000. Fewer innings obviously means fewer wins. From 2014 to this year, the percentage of quality starts, and let's be clear, quality starts are not quality starts for studs. The 6 innings and 3 runs is an ERA of 4.5, and that sucks. But that's a quality start in today's game. In 2014, it was at 54%. 54% of the starters had made quality starts during the season. Now it's at 35%. That's 1 out of every 3 starts is a quality start, which is just that. First of all, it's horrible. And secondly, it's not entertaining to watch. The average starting pitcher, and this is probably the biggest one, faces 22.2 batters per start. 20 years ago, it was 25.4. 30, it was 26.2. That's a full inning to 2 innings worth of hitters that pitchers are no longer facing. And we have, I think, sabermetrics in the Ivy League to thank for much of that. And by the way, Bill, I'm going to bet, and we can look this up, that all of those numbers haven't led to fewer pitchers on the disabled list, haven't led to fewer pitchers being hurt, haven't led to fewer pitchers having Tommy John. It hasn't led to anything positive, I think, health-wise for pitchers. In the first 1,406 starts, which is about little less than 1/3 of the season, no pitcher has thrown more than 115 pitches in a game. In 2016, in all of Major League Baseball, there were 26 starts of 115 pitches or more through the same date. 115 pitches per game. No pitcher has thrown more than that this year. And since 2016, there were 26 starts in the entire game of baseball that threw 115 or more pitches. That is absurd. Absurd. I mean, I promise you, if you go back and look at career totals, I know 115 pitches was a start. That was what I was. I mean, if I threw 115 pitches, in my mind, I was throwing a complete game, or I was getting into the 8th or 9th at a minimum. And that was expected. Now it is a barrier, which is mind-boggling to me. In Verducci's article, he makes this to be a big issue. I totally believe it's a big issue for me as a pitching coach, or as an organization. It's a big issue because there's still 9 innings in a game. There always will be 9 or more innings in a game. And if the starters are throwing less, the bullpen is throwing more. And that's not, I don't think that's a good thing. But it is the mentality, I think, of baseball today is we need at least 4 starters. Our 5th guy could be an opener, and we have to have probably 8 to 12 guys in the bullpen and in the minor leagues that we can shuffle in and out because people are going to get hurt, because we're going to use or overuse guys and all the things that go with that. And it's at the point now where I know a couple of managers that I've remained in touch with and talked to, in some situations, organizations, general managers will come down before a game and tell a manager, you cannot use A, B, and C out of the bullpen today. And that blows me away. And the reasoning is because our numbers, our data, our stats say that A, B, and C are less efficient throwing back-to-back days, or less efficient after they throw 35 or more pitches on a Monday than they would be on Tuesday, and all the things that go with that. And it's also, to me, it's another huge flaw in the sabermetric system, in that not accounting for the individual. Everybody's different. I play with a guy named Jim Corsi. And Jim Corsi had the strangest throwing program I've ever been around and ever seen. And the guy could throw every single day of the season, and his velocity would never change. And then I played with guys who, if they threw an inning and over an inning out of the bullpen, they had to sit for 3 days. Obviously, part of that is body composition. We talked a lot about that, how some players' bodies are built differently than others. But also, I think a huge part of that is mental strength. I think there are guys who are very weak, who will come out of a game because they feel something. And then there are guys who won't come out of a game if they're cut in half. And you know, those 2 guys exist in the same game doing the same job, and you're going to get very different results from both of them throughout the course of a week, a month, and a season, right? I mean, there are you know, now we've gotten away from, there's almost no longer, with the new rules out of the bullpen, there's no longer that left-handed specialist guy for the most part, because you have to face a certain number of hitters coming out of the bullpen. What is it? 3? You have to face 3 hitters coming out of the bullpen, and lineups will just turn guys around. It's also why versatility has become insanely valuable in Major League Baseball. It's always been valuable, but guys like, and I've said his name before, Dalton Varsho, who can play 5 positions, and offensively he can get after it. He becomes an immensely valuable guy because hitting from the opposite side, being a guy who can come in and not just hit, but, you know, I think back in my day, and we're actually going to mention a couple of these guys, but guys like Frank Catalanato and Dave Hansen and John Vanderwall, Bip Roberts, but guys that would come off the bench and were legitimate threats. Because I need to be very clear, if I've never probably said this before, pinch hitting in baseball is one of the toughest jobs on the planet. It is incredibly difficult to do, and check that. It's not incredibly hard to do. It's incredibly hard to be good at. And it takes a very special player. One of the best I ever saw and played with was a guy named Kevin Jordan, who was a 10th guy. I think physically he was probably not a guy that could have played every day. I think he'd be the first to admit that. But in multiple different roles each week, he was a super player. He could play a couple positions, and he was always prepared for an at-bat. And also, you're with the change in the rules with the DH and everything, you're seeing the pinch hitter devalued in a sense. In the National League, it was always something that pinch hitters started getting ready in the 4th or 5th inning because they knew they would be seeing an appearance probably late in the game. They knew what pitcher they might be seeing and what situation they might be used in. That's not changed drastically, but the fact of the matter is, it's pitch hitting appearances are and I'm going to bet, and I don't have empirical stats, but I'm going to bet they're way, way down. Because you're starting your best 9 offensively. And the game has proven that the mentality is put our best 9 players on offense out there and hide the guys that suck on defense. And I don't think that's necessarily the best winning approach, but that's the approach we're looking at. Also, and just to note on the pitching, the Dodgers, Rockies, Royals, and Tigers, all of them have 5 starting pitchers on the injured list. And we're gonna come up with some numbers later on as it relates to. We talked about this, Bill, early in the year. the WBC pitchers and the injured list, and we're going to see if I was remotely close to predictions, which is the guys that pitch in the WBC. It's very, very challenging for them to A, stay healthy, and B, have a good year.
The numbers are going to play out to what you predicted.
I think they will. DeGrom, Urias, Rodon, Max Fried, Brandon Woodruff, Robbie Ray, Walker Buehler, and Jinru, all are on the. That's a 5-man all-star rotation. That's a 5-man rotation to rival anybody's. Those guys are all on the injured list with varying degrees of nicks, cuts, and bruises. So. I don't think it's good for the sport, but it doesn't matter because I got to tell you, Bill, the feedback from fans has been overwhelmingly positive in terms of game time. The games are being played a whole lot faster, and fans seem to enjoy that. And
I think one of the other downsides to all of this, Curt, is fans recognize starting pitchers' names. They know who to look for.
They used to.
Are starters.
Yeah.
Well, you used to know all 5 starters of your home team.
I can still
heart.
name. Do you remember the early 70s A's?
Yeah.
Mike Norris, Steve McCatty, Rick Langford, Vita Blue, and there was another one in there. But those guys every one of them threw like 30 complete games. Billy Martin ruined them.
Correct.
But like I remember those rotations. I remember the Pirates in the 70s with Candelaria and Blass, Bruce Keeson, Jim Bibby, Jerry Royce. I mean, those were in the modern day, right? If I ask you to name me trios and duos of games, you're going to say Judge and Stanton, Ramirez and Ortiz. You know, very rarely are you going to have come out with a pitching trio like a Verlander and Scherzer. Or Randy and I were for a couple years. And then you had Clemens and Pettit, Ryan and C. I mean, those just aren't anymore.
Well, and tell me any of the middle relievers on any of those teams.
No, yeah,
you can't.
Tell me. You know what? It used to be you could go, wow, Rivera, Gagne, Trevor Hoffman, Billy Wagner, all of these closers were a thing. Now,
right now,
name me one guy that brings to, and I don't want to offend him because I'm not meaning him, but like Mariano Rivera was the class of closers, and then there was the Hoffmans who was right there, Hall of Famer, and the Wagners and whatnot. But you don't have that anymore. The closer is the unicorn now.
Yeah.
But in saying all of that, the one thing I have thought, and I saw Tito do it with Miller a couple years back, is the stopper. The guy that comes in, he's your best reliever, and you see him in the 6th inning or the 7th inning because it's 4-1. The bases are loaded. There's 1 out. You bring in your best pitcher, get out of the inning, you win the game 9-1. He doesn't generally get recognition, but that's your stopper. That's your closer. That's where you won the game. I do and agree with that, having that guy. I would like to have my closer. Because here's the thing, I say this and I can't emphasize this enough, and fans love to poo-poo this, but getting 3 outs in the 9th inning is different than any inning in the game. Different than any inning. And listen, I had my differences with Mitch Williams, and he was the teammate in my career that I didn't get along with probably the most. But I couldn't get through. I tried it. I was a closer early in my career. I didn't have the ability to forget a blown save, and Mitch did, and it's different.
It's mandatory in their makeup.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing I try to explain to people. If you pitched in October, you can understand what I mean. If not, it's hard. Getting 3 outs in the 9th inning of a close game is like getting 3 outs in the postseason. Every at bat in the postseason, the hitter is taking a 9th inning 1-run game approach. Every at bat from the 1st inning on. In the regular season, it's different. They're not. They can't. It's that you don't have the physical or mental ability. It wears you up. Greg Jeffries, I said this earlier, Greg Jeffries and Kevin Youkilis are 2 guys, in my opinion, whose careers were shorter than they could have been because mentally they were so hard on themselves after an out. And you're going to make 400 outs a season. You just can't do that. But they wore every at bat on their sleeve, and I think it was hard on them. Much harder than it should have been. There are other guys like Manny. Jesus, I didn't know if Manny hit a 5-run homer or punched out on 3 pitches looking after his at bat. And there were, but that gets back to the mental makeup. But I think you're talking about it's just a very different game now. And that's not to say it's worse or because I swore I wouldn't be that get off my lawn old guy, and I'm not. The game is still some of the most athletic human beings that have ever walked the face of the earth are standing on baseball fields around this country, and they're worth paying to watch. One of them who's worth paying to watch, who's absolutely sucked, his words, not mine, Trey Turner. And again, I keep going back to the fact, and I say this, Bill, guys are going to end up where they're supposed to end up at the end of the year. Trey is struggling. The Phillies are 22-25, which has them in fourth. And he was the big addition. And here's his quote. "I'm honest with myself. I've sucked," Turner told ESPN after a 6-3 loss to Arizona on Monday. 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, hitting .256, .303 with a .390 slugging percentage. Those are all career lows if the season ended today. The season doesn't end today. Trey Turner is going to be fine, people. He may not be a .320, .405, .550 slugger this year, but he's going to have his home runs. He's going to do his thing. He's going to be a presence in that lineup. He was one of the 4 big shortstops this winter with Bogarts, Correa, and Swanson to get, multi-$100 million deals.
And Wednesday night, he tied it up in the 9th and put him into extras. Like you said, he's going to be fine.
If you're playing fantasy baseball, buy low.
Right.
Buy low. This is and then Bill, your question was interesting. What was life like, and what did you do when you came against hard times on the field? How much does playing badly consume a player? 99% of the players, it devours you. It occupies. Here's the thing. Here's the big difference between position players and pitchers, in addition to all the other stuff. When I struggled as a starter on Monday, I had to suck on it till Friday or Saturday. I had to wait 4 days after a horrible outing, just reliving that thing in my head. And there's a progression. When you're a young player, it was, and my wife will testify, miserable 4 days in my home. I didn't kick my dog. I'm an animal lover. I wasn't physically violent. I was just a miserable person. And I think there are some times when my wife was like, listen, just lash out because I can't watch this anymore. Grumpy, feeling sorry for myself, miserable. And you learn as you get older, number one, it's incredibly selfish because there are 24 other guys playing a game for 4 consecutive days other than you. Your game's over. And as you get older, you realize that. And I can remember, Bill, a very, very pivotal time in my career. In 1993, I pitched against the Colorado Rockies, and I went 5 innings, and I gave up 5 runs, pitched horrible, and I got the win, and we won. And after the game, I was miserable. And I was miserable to the media, blah, blah, blah. And I remember Darren Dalton pulling me aside and saying, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Are you that selfish?" And I didn't. And he's like, "We won the game, dude." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that is selfish, isn't it?" And it's selfish in the sense that I'm mad because I didn't do well, but we won. And as I got older, life became a lot easier because on Monday when I pitched bad and we won, I was good. The only time that I ever felt that early in my career was in the postseason. And if you think about it, I pitched horrible in game 1 we lose game 1 of the World Series. I'm not upset and mad at game 2 because we have to win game 2. And that's a postseason mentality. And that you eventually get to that in the regular season, but it's a selfish thing. And I learned early in my career that it was selfish. And after that, I realized that he obviously was 100% right. Dave Hollins was another guy who came up to me after that and said, "Dude, we won." And it's funny because Dave learned that same lesson himself that year from the same guy. Dutch, after Dave went 0 for 4. We lost the game and he had a bad game and he was miserable. We won the game. And Dutch was like pissed. And he had every right to be that. But again, that's what a leader does. And as you get older, that's what you do. And you rarely see young players with that mentality.
Time to get to your top 5 hitters that you hated facing the most. All
right. So I honestly didn't have to even really do any studying or look this up because it was pretty obvious, pretty easy, and because I remembered them. I remembered them just because I can remember the at-bats. I always say Todd Helton and Derek Lee were the worst ever for me right-handed. Helton only hit 333 off me, but it was in 54 at-bats, and he hit 5 homers and had 6 doubles. I don't remember the guy ever hitting a single off me, I swear to God. And it was a hard 333. And by that, I mean, I can remember in Colorado, we were playing them in the old when Coors Field first got built, and I threw Todd Helton a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, like chin music. Got him off I had to get him off the plate. And on the next pitch, I came back with a 98-mile-an-hour high fastball. And left-handed hitters by nature are low ball hitters. Just it's the progression of their swing, the way your body is made up physically is and it all has to do with your core and your rib cage and the way everything sits in your body. Left-handed hitters naturally have a better swing at the ball down, and they're natural low ball hitters. Generally don't hit the high. I threw a 97, 98-mile-an-hour high fastball. Todd Helton got on top of it, hit it, and I remember seeing Rico Brogna at first base jump for the ball, and the ball hit off the fence in right field. On a line, it didn't go up or down. It just went through the field. And literally my right fielder was like just turning when the ball, it was hit so hard that it hit the wall before he was 10 steps out of the box. And I remember thinking that's the hardest ball any human has ever hit, not just off me, but ever in the history of the game. But he crushed me. Derek Lee, some guys, I just can't answer it. He saw the ball. He was 11 for 26. 5 of those 11 were home runs. And I remember, I'll never forget John Vukovic, one of my greatest human beings ever, said something to the effect of, hey, let's mix in a curveball. I threw a curveball. He hit a home run. And I remember, this is typical Vuk. I threw a curveball, good curveball, and he hit it out of the ballpark. And after the inning, I said, yeah, there was a curveball. He goes, yeah, but that wasn't a good one. Like, I told you to throw the pitch. You didn't throw it exactly where I wanted it, so it was a bad pitch. But I remember just kind of giving up. Frank Catalanato, for those that remember, wore me out. He was hit 500 off me in 22 at-bats, I think. Just ate me alive and was a beast against me. Early in my career, these next two names might shock you. Right-handed guys, Marquise Grissom and Mark Lemke. Grissom hit only 330, but it was in 94 at-bats. I couldn't get him out. And Mark Lemke was 15 for 31 off me. And I think he had 4 career homers, 2 of them were off me. And if you remember that old Braves lineup, and I played against Mark coming up in the minor leagues, phenomenal guy, phenomenal baseball player, and very much a Dustin Pedroia before there was a Dustin Pedroia, not as offensively talented, raked me. And the two things that those guys have in common would be what, Bill?
Not big hitters.
Not big hitters.
Yeah. Not little big guys. Yeah.
I learned, and it was a hard lesson for me to learn, because and it makes sense when you think about it. Small hitters, short hitters, Dustin Pedroia, Jose Altuve, if you can't hit the high fastball, you can't play in the big leagues, because every fastball, for the most part, is up in your zone as a small hitter. And when you get the big leagues, they can all hit it. And so being a power guy, and I think my early mentality was, here's a little guy. He's a little guy, so I'm going to give him big stuff. And it was they could all hammer the fastball. And I learned the hard way that
Catalanato wasn't big.
Huh?
Catalanato wasn't big.
No. He was I thought he was a much more talented hitter than he ever got credit for. He was a tremendously good player. And along the lines of good players, I think this speaks volumes. I don't know if he's telling the truth. I tend to believe he is. On Tuesday night, Mike Trout hit his 361st home run, I think. Yeah, 361st home run over Boston. And there were times, and I'll go back on a personal note, there were times in my career when I did something and someone would say, hey, you did something. So in the 93 playoffs against the Braves, I struck out the first 5 hitters of game 1. And after the game, someone told me that only, I think it was Nolan Ryan and Carl Hubble had ever done that. And so I was like, oh my God, because I knew the game, and I know Mike knows the game very well. His 361st home run tied him with Joe DiMaggio. And I got to believe, as a hitter, anytime someone says DiMaggio or Mantle or Musial or Aaron or Ruth, as far as company goes, you're feeling it. And I say it again, I believe he's going to be the most talented player anybody alive ever sees. He didn't know that until after the game, when Mickey Moniak told him in the clubhouse. And he said, it means a lot. Anytime you pass or tie a great, or even just be in the same conversation with a great player, it's really special, especially another center fielder. And I love the guy. He's only hitting 275, which is his lowest average through 46 games. And his strikeout rate is up at 27.3%. and this is the most amazing number for me, Bill. It's the second highest strikeout rate in his 13-year career.
13.
Mike Trout has been in the big leagues for 13 years, which means I think he turned 22 this week, because he got to the big leagues when he was like 9. But 3-time MVP, probably should be a 5-time MVP, honestly. He'll end up where he's supposed to end up. He'll end up around 300, 30 homers, 100 some RBIs, 420 on base percentage, and everything about that. That Mike Trout will be Mike Trout. So that is, I think that's probably good for this one.
I think so too.
We've got enough. We are going to check back with you guys on Monday.
Next Tuesday.
But you guys have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to try and see our families, enjoy our time, and have a great one, guys. God bless. OutKick.com and Spotify, the Curt Schilling Baseball Show. Take care, guys. Have a great weekend, Billy.